Have you ever wondered where family loyalty ends? Sometimes, claiming it is for the kids is just a shield for greed. It took exactly 48 hours for the mask to slip. This is not just a fight over an inherited cabin, it is a spectacular deception by someone who shares my blood. Get ready to rethink your own relatives, because sometimes, the most dangerous enemy is the one sitting right across from you at Sunday dinner. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Maya Revenge Stories. Unfortunately, YouTube has completely demonetized our channel, leaving us with no budget to keep operating. If you enjoy today's story, please consider supporting us with just $1 so our team can pay their living expenses and continue creating amazing content for you. You can support us by scanning the QR code on your screen or by clicking the donation link in the description or the pinned comment. My name is Rachel Espinoza, and I am 31 years old. I work as a senior systems analyst at Nebula Core Innovations. If that sounds like a highly demanding job, I can assure you that the reality of it is even worse. My life is an endless blur of high-stakes tech deployments, aggressive deadlines, and ringing phones. I regularly pull 60 to 70-hour work weeks that leave me entirely drained, both physically and emotionally. The corporate grind in the city is a massive machine that constantly demands more of your energy, and for years, I gave it absolutely everything I had. That all changed when my beloved Aunt Beatrice passed away, in her will. She left me something far more valuable than a stock portfolio or a bank account. She left me her rustic, century-old wooden cabin hidden deep in the foggy embrace of the Blue Ridge Mountains. If you looked at the property from a purely financial perspective, its commercial value was not exceptionally high. It needed a new roof, the plumbing was highly temperamental, and the nearest grocery store was a 45-minute drive down winding dirt roads. But to me, that mountain cabin was entirely priceless. It was the physical embodiment of my entire childhood. I spent every summer there, learning to fish in the rocky creek, reading thick books on the creaky wraparound porch, and listening to the wind howl through the ancient pine trees. As an adult, that secluded wooden home became my absolute sanctuary. It was the one place where the deafening noise of the city could not reach me, a vital refuge where I could breathe clean air and piece my mental health back together after another grueling month at the tech firm. The inheritance was split completely fairly between the siblings. While I received the physical property, my older brother Liam, who is 35 years old, received a massive lump sum of cash from the estate. The money he walked away with was exactly equivalent to the appraised market value of the cabin. There was absolutely no favoritism from Aunt Beatrice. On the day the estate lawyer finalized the paperwork, Liam was glowing with smug satisfaction. He eagerly announced to everyone in the room that he was going to use this massive financial windfall to invest in a smart business opportunity. He bragged loudly that this secret venture would secure an early retirement and set his family up for life. I was genuinely happy for him. I had my peaceful retreat, and he had his substantial seed money. Everything seemed perfectly balanced. But that peace did not last long. A few months later, the atmosphere during our traditional Sunday family dinners began to shift noticeably. Strangely, Liam stopped talking about his brilliant business venture. Instead, he replaced his eager boasting with a constant stream of aggressive complaints regarding his current living situation. He would sit at the dinner table, aggressively stabbing his fork into his roasted meat, and let out these heavy theatrical sighs. "It is just impossible to breathe in our apartment these days," Liam would declare, looking directly across the table at me. "Chloe and the two kids are practically stepping on each other's toes from morning until night. Two growing children simply cannot thrive in a tiny concrete box in the middle of the noisy city. It is suffocating. They desperately need a connection to nature. They need open land, big yards, and fresh air to run around in." I felt genuine sympathy for my niece and nephew. They were incredibly sweet kids, and city living is undoubtedly tough on highly energetic children. So, I extended an open and honest invitation. "Liam, why do you not bring Chloe and the kids up to the Blue Ridge cabin for the weekends?" I offered with a warm, sincere smile. "You guys can go hiking, light up the barbecue in the backyard, and let the kids run totally wild in the woods. The door is always open for you. You do not even have to ask me beforehand. But my brother never once accepted the offer. He always manufactured a highly convenient excuse. The drive was allegedly too exhausting for just 2 days, or the kids had a birthday party to attend, or his wife Chloe was feeling under the weather. Instead of accepting my hospitality, Liam weaponized it. He started dropping heavy, guilt-inducing remarks aimed directly at my conscience. "It is just an absolute shame," he would mutter, ensuring his voice was just loud enough for our parents to catch every single word. "It is a real tragedy that such a massive, beautiful property is just sitting there completely empty for 5 days a week. It is a family asset. Realistically speaking, it feels like a horrible waste that only one single person gets to monopolize all that space, while an entire family of 4 is suffocating in a tiny apartment." It did not take long for my parents, Marcus and Elena, to join his selfish crusade. They have always possessed a glaring blind spot when it comes to their golden boy. My mother would reach across the dining table, pat my hand with a deeply condescending smile, and deliver her judgment. "Rachel, sweetheart, you have to admit that Liam has a very valid point," she would say softly but firmly. "You are just one single woman. Why on earth do you need a huge mountain house all to yourself? Your niece and nephew are practically living in a closet. They are lacking the essential space they need to grow and develop properly." My father, Marcus, would immediately nod in stern agreement, crossing his arms over his chest to physically display his authority. "Family looks out for family. Rachel," he would lecture me, his tone heavy with manufactured disappointment. "A house like that is meant for children to run around in, not for a single woman to hide away in on the weekends. You really need to start thinking about the bigger picture here instead of just focusing on your own comfort." The pressure escalated from passive-aggressive dinner remarks to a full-blown orchestrated ambush. It happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. I had just returned to my city apartment after a brutal 12-hour shift, desperate for nothing more than a hot shower and sleep. Instead, I found my parents, Marcus and Elena, sitting stiffly on my living room sofa alongside Liam. They had used the emergency spare key I gave my mother years ago. The air in the room was thick, completely drained of any familial warmth. "Sit down, Rachel," my father commanded, pointing to the armchair opposite them. It did not sound like a request. It sounded like a corporate disciplinary hearing. My mother leaned forward, intertwining her fingers with a look of extreme seriousness. "We are here to resolve this housing situation once and for all. Your brother's family is suffering, and this selfish standoff of yours is tearing our family apart." "Standoff," I echoed, my chest tightening instantly. "There is no standoff. The cabin is mine." "Be reasonable," Liam interjected, crossing his arms and putting on a perfectly rehearsed face of a stressed, desperate father. "You are never going to use that property to its full potential. Mom and Dad agree. We want you to sign the deed over to me." I stared at them, completely stunned by the sheer audacity. "You want me to just give you my inheritance after you already received your share in cash?" "Not give," my father corrected sharply, his voice booming in the small room. "Sell. Liam is willing to offer you a symbolic sum to make it a legal transaction. $10,000. A token of good faith to keep the property in the family." $10,000. The property was worth at least 40 times that amount. My own parents were sitting in my living room, demanding I hand over my sanctuary for practically nothing, all to appease my brother's manufactured misery. I asked them to leave, locking the door behind them with trembling hands, but the psychological siege had only just begun. For the next 14 days, my phone became an instrument of daily torture. Liam relentlessly weaponized my niece and nephew against me. Every single morning, I would wake up to a new video message. The footage always featured the 2 kids crammed into a tiny corner of his apartment living room, their toys piled up against the wall, looking genuinely bored and restless. "Say hi to Aunt Rachel." "Guys," Liam's voice would prompt from behind the camera, "tell her how much you wish you had a big backyard to play in." The little ones would dutifully repeat the lines, entirely unaware of the cruel game their father was playing. The sheer emotional weight of those videos began to crush me. I stopped sleeping. My physical health deteriorated, and my performance at work started to slip. I would sit at my desk, staring blindly at my computer screen, completely consumed by an overwhelming sense of guilt. Was I being the villain of this story? Was my attachment to Aunt Beatrice's memory actually just a mask for toxic selfishness? I was a single woman holding on to a massive plot of land while two innocent children were boxed into a concrete prison. The manipulation was incredibly effective because it preyed on my deepest core values. I genuinely loved those kids, and Liam knew exactly how to twist that love into a jagged knife. When the guilt-tripping did not result in an immediate surrender, his wife Chloe stepped in to deliver the fatal psychological blows. Her voicemails were absolute masterclasses in passive-aggressive cruelty. "Hi, Rachel. It is Chloe." Her voice would smoothly purr out of my phone speaker. "I just wanted to let you know we will not be coming to your birthday dinner this weekend. Honestly, it is just too difficult for the kids to be around someone who cares so little about their well-being. It breaks my heart to do this, but as a mother, I have to protect them from toxic influences. If you are going to turn your back on your own blood, I suppose we have to accept that you are no longer a part of this family." The threat of total isolation hung heavily in the air. Surrender the cabin, or lose my niece and nephew forever. My chest felt perpetually tight, a constant state of agonizing suffocation. I was inches away from breaking, inches away from calling my lawyer and drafting the transfer papers just to make the relentless pressure stop. But then, reality shifted on a quiet Thursday afternoon. I was sitting in my cubicle when my phone buzzed with a sudden alert. It was a notification from the rusty, temperamental security camera I had installed on the cabin porch last year, just to keep an eye out for wandering bears. The notification read, "Motion detected." I opened the live video feed, expecting to see a raccoon or a stray deer. Instead, the grainy, low-resolution video showed 3 men walking across my front lawn. One of them was Liam. He was not dressed for a casual mountain hike. He was wearing a sharp business suit, pointing eagerly toward the tree line. The other 2 men were also in suits, holding large leather binders and operating heavy, professional-grade surveying equipment. They had tripods and laser levels, planting brightly colored markers into the soil, meticulously measuring the boundaries of my property. I watched, my blood running completely cold, as Liam enthusiastically shook hands with the tallest man, pointing aggressively at the very spot where Aunt Beatrice used to grow her roses. Any trace of guilt, any lingering feeling of selfishness, evaporated in that exact second. If Liam just wanted a rustic weekend getaway for his children, he would not be out there with commercial land surveyors. Fathers looking for a backyard do not bring corporate executives to measure the soil. A sudden sharp clarity cut through the thick fog of manipulation that had choked me for weeks. My brother was not a desperate family man. He was a calculated liar hiding a massive secret. The urge to call him right then and scream until my lungs gave out was completely overpowering. I wanted to confront him, to demand an explanation, to expose his trespassing, but I forced my thumb away from the call button. If I exploded now, he would just invent another lie. He would claim they were contractors, or landscapers, or some other fabricated excuse. No. I needed undeniable proof. I took a deep, steadying breath, my mind shifting from the emotional wreckage of a betrayed sister to the cold, analytical precision of a professional. I saved the video footage to my secure cloud drive. I was going to stay perfectly silent, play the role of the breaking, guilt-ridden sister, and uncover exactly what kind of monster was sitting at my family dinner table. I submitted a formal request for a 7-day emergency leave of absence from Nebula Corps. I desperately needed physical distance from the suffocating grip of my family to think clearly. On Monday morning, I packed a small bag and drove 4 hours up the winding, foggy roads to the municipal town located right at the base of the Blue Ridge Mountains. I traded my usual sharp corporate blazer for a casual fleece jacket and sunglasses, carefully adopting the persona of a wealthy out-of-town tourist looking to invest in local mountain real estate. My first stop was the Municipal Land Planning Office. The town hall was a cramped brick building that smelled strongly of old paper and stale coffee. I approached the front desk and politely requested to see the recent public zoning filings for the districts surrounding my property. The clerk, an older woman looking over her reading glasses, handed me a thick, heavy ledger. I ran my index finger down the long columns of ink until I found my property's exact parcel identification number. My breath instantly caught in my throat. The record showed that someone had quietly filed a preliminary application to rezone my specific plot of land. They were requesting to change the status from a protected residential and conservation zone to a high-density commercial development zone. The applicant name was hidden behind a generic corporate entity, but the target was undeniably my home. I needed local information, the kind you cannot find in official ledgers. I walked across the street to the town's oldest diner, a worn-down wooden establishment where all the local contractors and business owners gathered. I sat at the counter, ordered a black coffee, and struck up a casual conversation with the owner, a talkative older man with a gray beard. I pretended I was a buyer worried about aggressive corporate developers ruining the local charm. I casually slid a crisp $100 bill across the sticky counter, sliding a printed photograph of my brother right next to it. The owner smoothly pocketed the money, leaned over the counter, and spilled everything. "Oh, I know that guy." The owner chuckled darkly. "He comes in here smelling like expensive city cologne. He has been up here every other week for the past 6 months. He always reserves the big back booth to buy expensive lunches for a group of aggressive corporate suits." "Do you know who the suits work for?" I asked, keeping my voice perfectly steady despite the violent pounding in my chest. "They wear these branded jackets," the owner replied, wiping a coffee stain with a rag. "Apex Peak Resorts." The name hit me like a physical blow. Apex Peak Resorts was a notorious, ruthless development conglomerate. They were famous across the state for buying up pristine mountain land, clear-cutting the ancient forests, and pouring thousands of tons of concrete to build massive, highly exclusive ski resorts for the ultra-rich. The horrifying truth violently shattered the illusion my brother had built. There was never going to be a backyard playground for my niece and nephew. Liam had absolutely no intention of ever moving his family up to the quiet mountains. He was orchestrating a massive, calculated land flip. He wanted to manipulate me into signing over the property deed for a miserable $10,000 so he could immediately turn around and sell the entire mountain plot to a mega corporation for an estimated $3 or $4 million. My sanctuary, the place holding every precious memory of Aunt Beatrice, would be instantly bulldozed into a paved VIP parking lot. But a massive question still remained. Why was he doing this? Liam had just inherited a massive cash fortune from the estate. Why was he acting like a desperate, cornered criminal? I sat in my rental car, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I pulled out my phone and dialed a close friend from my university days who currently works as a senior forensic auditor for a major firm. I begged him to run a highly discreet, off-the-books background check on my brother's financial footprint. I asked him to look into any public court records, tax liens, or hidden business registrations. I sat in the freezing car for 4 agonizing hours, staring blankly at the mountain peaks in the distance. When my phone finally rang, the information my friend delivered was absolutely chilling. "Rachel, I do not know how to tell you this, but your brother is financially radioactive," my friend warned, his voice low and serious. "He is completely, utterly bankrupt." The massive cash inheritance Liam had loudly bragged about was entirely gone. Every single penny of it had evaporated in less than 18 months. According to the digital paper trail, Liam had recklessly funneled the entire estate into highly volatile cryptocurrency schemes that totally collapsed overnight. In a panicked, desperate attempt to win the lost money back, he had spiraled into illegal offshore sports gambling syndicates. He had taken out massive, high-interest loans against his own city apartment, maxed out every single credit card in his name, and was currently drowning in hundreds of thousands of dollars of toxic debt. The creditors were circling closer every single day, threatening foreclosure and legal action. The pieces of the puzzle violently snapped together in my mind, forming a picture of absolute depravity. This was never about a cramped apartment. It was never about innocent children needing fresh air. That entire emotional narrative was a heavily fabricated stage play designed by a sociopath. Liam was terrified, cornered, and facing imminent financial destruction. He had engineered this massive psychological war to steal my home and sell it to a resort company simply to save his own skin from the debt collectors. And the most terrifying part of all, I realized in that exact moment of crushing clarity that our parents and his wife Chloe had absolutely no idea. They genuinely believed the fake, heartfelt story he was selling. They were his unwitting pawns, blindly helping a desperate gambling addict rob his own sister, all under the sacred, untouchable banner of family duty. I drove back to the city with a heart made of absolute ice. I sat on my couch, picked up my phone, and initiated a three-way conference call with my parents and my brother. I injected a perfectly crafted tremble into my voice, playing the role of the defeated, exhausted sister who had finally crumbled under the weight of their relentless moral superiority. "I have been thinking a lot about what you all said," I whispered into the receiver. "You are right. I am being entirely selfish holding on to the cabin, Liam. If it really means that much for the children to have a yard, I will accept your offer. I will transfer the deed to you." The collective sigh of relief on the other end of the line was completely audible. Liam quickly stepped in, his voice dripping with fake, manufactured sympathy. "I know this is hard for you, Rachel, but you are doing the right thing for the family. We will bring the paperwork and a certified check for $10,000 this weekend." "Why do you not bring everyone up to the cabin?" I suggested softly. "Let us have a nice family barbecue on Saturday. Chloe and the kids can explore their new backyard, and we can sign the documents together on the porch, just like a real family." They eagerly agreed. The trap was set perfectly. Saturday morning arrived with bright, crisp mountain sunshine. By noon, my brother's expensive SUV pulled into the dirt driveway. As soon as the car doors opened, the theatrical performance began. Chloe stepped out, wearing a flowing, earthy sundress that looked completely ridiculous on her, and immediately rushed over to pull me into an aggressive, suffocating hug. "Oh, Rachel, thank you," Chloe gushed, her voice excessively loud and dripping with artificial sweetness. "You have no idea what this massive sacrifice means to us. You are truly an angel. The kids are just so incredibly blessed to have an aunt who puts their happiness first." Liam stood behind her, his hands shoved casually into his pockets, trying his hardest to look like a humble, hard-working father instead of a desperate thief. He gave me a slow, solemn nod, playing the part of the gracious victor. My niece and nephew immediately ran toward the tree line, completely oblivious to the toxic wasteland of adult greed surrounding them. My parents arrived shortly after. My father, Marcus, took immediate control of the outdoor grill, flipping burgers while delivering a pompous, self-righteous speech to the entire yard. "I have to admit, I was incredibly worried about you for a while. Rachel," my father announced proudly, waving his metal spatula in the air. "But seeing you make this completely selfless decision shows me you have finally grown up. You are 31 years old, and you finally understand that nothing is more important than blood. Family values always have to come first." I sat quietly in Aunt Beatrice's favorite wooden rocking chair, sipping a glass of iced tea, wearing a soft, agreeable smile. "You are absolutely right, Dad. Blood reveals everything." As soon as the ceramic plates were cleared from the wooden picnic table, Liam could no longer hide his desperate impatience. He practically sprinted to his car and returned carrying a thick, heavy leather folder. He slapped the stack of legal documents onto the wooden table right in front of me, clicking a silver pen and pushing it directly into my hand. "All right, let us get this boring administrative stuff out of the way so we can enjoy the rest of the afternoon." Liam chuckled nervously, tapping his index finger repeatedly on the signature line at the very bottom of the final page. "Just sign right here, and we are completely done." I did not pick up the pen. Instead, I slowly pulled the thick stack of papers toward me, adopting a look of naive curiosity. I should probably read what I'm signing. Right, Aunt Beatrice always told me to read the fine print. Liam shifted his weight uncomfortably, his fake smile faltering for a fraction of a second. It is just standard family transfer paperwork. Rachel, boilerplate stuff. You do not need to read all that boring legal jargon. Oh, it will only take a minute, I replied brightly. I picked up the first page and began reading aloud, my voice exceptionally clear, carrying across the quiet porch. Wait, this is interesting. At the top here, it says this document was drafted by the corporate offices of Sterling and Vance. Liam, are they not a high-level commercial real estate firm? Why did you not just use our regular family attorney to draft a simple residential transfer? The air on the porch suddenly grew incredibly heavy. Chloe stopped smiling. My father turned away from the grill, a slight frown creasing his forehead. Liam's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. A single bead of sweat formed at his hairline and rolled down his temple. They are just a firm a friend recommended. They handle all kinds of things. It really does not matter. Rachel, please, just sign the paper. And what is this clause right here on page 4? I continued, ignoring his rising panic. It talks about transferring the property free and clear of any residential zoning restrictions, with an immediate option for commercial leveling. Why would you need commercial leveling for a children's playground? Rachel, you are completely overthinking standard legal phrasing. Liam snapped, his voice suddenly sharp and strained. He aggressively tapped his expensive wristwatch. Look at the time. It is already 4 o'clock. The online notary service I booked is going to clock out in exactly 45 minutes. If we do not finish this right now, the whole system locks us out until Monday morning. Just pick up the pen and sign the damn paper. His sudden, aggressive outburst hung awkwardly in the quiet mountain air. The smug, confident older brother was completely gone, replaced by a sweating, desperate man frantically trying to plug the holes in his sinking ship. My mother looked at him with genuine confusion, while Chloe nervously crossed her arms. Sensing that the carefully constructed narrative was beginning to fracture, I just sat there, perfectly still, enjoying every single agonizing second of his panic before unleashing the storm. I held the silver pen exactly 1 inch above the thick white paper. The entire porch was dead silent, save for the frantic, shallow breathing of my older brother. He was leaning over the wooden table, his eyes locked onto the tip of the pen like a starving animal staring at a piece of meat. This was the moment he thought he had won. This was the exact second he believed his brilliant, ruthless manipulation had finally broken me. I did not sign my name. Instead, I calmly placed the silver pen down onto the wooden table. The small click it made sounded like a gunshot in the incredibly tense air. I reached down into the canvas tote bag resting at my feet. I wrapped my fingers around the massive, heavy manila folder I had painstakingly compiled over the past week. With a sudden, forceful swing of my arm, I slammed the thick stack of documents directly into the center of the picnic table. The heavy thud made the ceramic plates and iced tea glasses rattle violently against the wood. "What is this?" my father demanded, stepping away from the grill, his spatula lowered in confusion. I did not answer him. I reached into the folder and violently ripped out a stack of glossy 8x10 photographs, scattering them across the table like a deck of playing cards. They were the pictures my private investigator friend had sourced, clear, high-resolution images of Liam sitting in the expensive local diner, aggressively shaking hands and clinking glasses with a man wearing a jacket clearly embroidered with the Apex Peak Resorts logo. Next came the financial statements. I threw down thick stacks of bank records, aggressively highlighted with bright yellow marker. I spread them out so the glaring, negative balances were facing my parents and his wife. Those are the preliminary architectural blueprints for a 300-room luxury ski resort, I announced, my voice cutting through the crisp mountain air like a sharpened blade. And those papers next to them are the final foreclosure warnings and legal notices from 4 different aggressive collection agencies. It turns out, your brilliant smart business opportunity was nothing more than highly volatile offshore cryptocurrency schemes and illegal sports betting. You blew through your entire massive inheritance in less than 18 months. Liam. Chloe stepped forward, her floral sundress swaying gently in the mountain breeze. She looked down at the wooden table, her brow furrowed in deep, agonizing confusion. She picked up one of the bank statements, her eyes frantically scanning the brightly highlighted numbers. I watched the exact moment her perfectly constructed, arrogant reality completely shattered into a million tiny pieces. The blood rapidly drained from her face, leaving her looking absolutely ghostly. Liam, Chloe whispered, her voice trembling so violently it barely made a sound. Liam, what is this? This paper says we owe over $400,000. It says our city apartment has a second mortgage on it. We do not have a second mortgage. What did you do behind my back? Liam physically recoiled from her, his hands shooting up defensively in the air. Chloe, sweetheart, please do not look at that garbage. It is totally fake. Rachel is just trying to cause drama because she is insanely jealous of our family. She forged all of this just to get out of the deal. It has your exact social security number printed right at the top. Liam, Chloe shrieked, her voice suddenly cracking into a hysterical, agonizing sob. She dropped the paper as if it had physically burned her fingers. She pointed a shaking finger at the photos of him with the resort developers. You told me we were getting a beautiful backyard for the kids. You told me Rachel was a selfish, toxic monster who wanted our children to suffer in a tiny concrete box. You told me we were building a future here. She lunged at him, beating her small fists frantically against his chest. You completely bankrupt us. You lied to my face every single day. There is no yard. There is no future. You just wanted to steal your sister's house to pay off your disgusting gambling debts. My mother, Elena, collapsed heavily into the nearest wooden rocking chair. She covered her mouth with both of her trembling hands, her eyes wide with absolute, unadulterated horror. She looked at the bank statements, then up at Liam, and finally over to me. For the first time in my entire adult life, the condescending, judgmental glare she always reserved for me was completely gone. In its place was a sickening, crushing realization of her own monstrous complicity. Marcus stood completely frozen next to the smoking barbecue grill. The man who had spent the last month loudly lecturing me about family values and selfless sacrifice was now staring at his golden boy as if looking at a complete, terrifying stranger. You used us, my father whispered, his voice thick with devastating shame and heartbreak. He dropped the metal spatula onto the grass, the sound muffled by the dirt. You made us harass your sister. You made us practically terrorize our own daughter in her own home, just so you could bulldoze her inheritance and sell it to a soulless corporation to cover up your massive failures. The walls were completely closing in on Liam. His wife was sobbing hysterically, backing away from him as if he were carrying a deadly disease. His devoted parents were looking at him with utter disgust and betrayal, and I was standing there, perfectly still, watching his pathetic empire of lies crumble into absolute dust. With nowhere left to run, the mask of the loving, stressed father violently tore away, revealing the terrified, cornered animal underneath. "Shut up!" Liam suddenly roared, his face contorting into a mask of pure, ugly rage. He grabbed the heavy glass pitcher of iced tea and violently hurled it across the porch. It smashed against the wooden railing, sending a massive shower of sharp glass and sticky liquid everywhere. The sudden violence made Chloe scream in terror and cover her face. He turned his wild, bloodshot eyes toward me, aggressively stepping over the broken glass. He pointed a shaking, accusatory finger directly at my face. "This is entirely your fault. Rachel!" he screamed, spit flying from his mouth, his chest heaving aggressively. "You just had to go digging. Did you not? You just could not pick up the pen and sign the damn paper. You sit up here in your massive, useless house, completely alone. While I am absolutely drowning, I am losing everything. The collectors are going to take my home, my car, my entire life. All you had to do was give me this stupid piece of wood and dirt. You do not even need it. You could have saved me, but you are too insanely selfish to care about your own flesh and blood. His logic was entirely twisted, a desperate, pathetic attempt to cast himself as the victim of the very crime he was actively trying to commit. He was breathing heavily, waiting for me to shrink away from his explosive anger like I had always done when we were children. But I was no longer the little sister he could bully and manipulate. I did not flinch. I did not take a single step back. I stood incredibly tall, letting his pathetic, desperate tantrum wash over me without leaving a single mark on my conscience. I reached down, picked up the silver pen, and deliberately snapped it into 2 jagged pieces, dropping the broken plastic onto the scattered legal documents. "I am not your savior. Liam," I stated, my voice completely devoid of any emotion, as cold and hard as the mountain stones beneath our feet. "And I am certainly not your collateral damage. You made your own choices. You gambled your entire inheritance away. You completely destroyed your marriage, and you psychologically abused me for months. You do not get to blame me for the fire you started in your own house." I raised my arm and pointed my finger firmly toward the gravel driveway. "This deal is permanently canceled. This is my property, and you are officially trespassing. Get off my land right now, Liam, and do not you ever come near me again." Chloe did not waste a single second. She turned on her heel, marching straight past Liam without making any physical contact. "I am leaving," she announced, her voice eerily calm after the explosive screaming. "I am taking the children, and I am driving back to the city right now. Do not bother coming back to the apartment. I am filing for divorce on Monday morning." She gathered my niece and nephew, buckling them into the back seat of the SUV, and sped down the dirt driveway, leaving a thick cloud of dust behind. Liam was left standing alone on the wooden porch, utterly stranded without his car, without his family, and without the financial lifeline he had tried so desperately to steal from me. I looked at him, feeling absolutely nothing but cold indifference. "Start walking," I told him, pointing down the 4-mile stretch of winding road leading back to the municipal town. He eventually managed to call a tremendously expensive private taxi to get back to the city, but that was merely the beginning of his absolute downfall. Within exactly 3 weeks, the aggressive collection agencies he had been dodging finally cornered him. His creditors filed massive civil lawsuits, entirely liquidating what little personal assets he had left. The authorities also launched a formal investigation into his illegal offshore sports gambling, resulting in severe legal penalties and complete financial ruin. He was left with absolutely nothing. As for my parents, the crushing weight of their own monstrous guilt finally caught up to them. For 2 straight months, Marcus and Elena relentlessly bombarded my phone with deeply emotional voicemails and lengthy text messages, desperately begging for my forgiveness. They pleaded for a chance to sit down and repair our fractured relationship, but I refused to simply sweep their psychological abuse under the rug. I established absolute, ironclad boundaries. I sent them one final, definitive message. "You allowed yourselves to be weaponized against me." I wrote, "You blindly prioritized a lie over my well-being. I need a significant amount of space, and you both need a long time to seriously reflect on your own actions. Until I am ready, do not contact me again." To ensure that no one could ever threaten my sanctuary again, I took permanent legal action. I spent the next 6 months working closely with the Municipal Land Planning Office and several regional environmental agencies. I officially placed the entire mountain property into a heavily protected cultural and environmental conservation trust. By signing that specific legal framework, I permanently stripped the land of any future commercial zoning capabilities. No corporate developer, not even a massive conglomerate like Apex Peak Resorts, will ever be legally allowed to pour a single ounce of concrete or cut down a single ancient pine tree on this property. The storm is finally over. It is currently a quiet, foggy Tuesday morning. I am sitting in Aunt Beatrice's wooden rocking chair on the creaky wraparound porch. I have a hot cup of black coffee in my hands, poured carefully into her favorite chipped ceramic mug. I can hear the wind howling gently through the trees, and the faint, peaceful sound of the rocky creek flowing in the distance. The crushing pressure in my chest is completely gone. I am entirely free. wrapped in the profound, untouchable peace of knowing that my life and my home belong solely to me. Thank you so very much for listening to my story today. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please let me know your city or country in the comments below. If you found today's story engaging, please consider supporting our channel with just $1. You can donate by scanning the QR code right here on the screen, or by using the donation link provided in the video description or the pinned comment. Your generous contribution allows us to pay our hardworking staff, helping them feed their families while we continue to create more high-quality stories for you. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next one.